The gymnasium fell silent as 8-year-old Emma walked to the center of the decorated stage, clutching a small, crudely wrapped box that looked nothing like the elaborate presents her classmates had received. Parents in designer clothes whispered behind manicured hands, their eyes filled with pity and judgment as they watched the little girl in the second-hand dress. Her father, David, stood at the back of the room in his worn work uniform, his calloused hands trembling as he watched his daughter face the crowd alone. The other fathers sat confidently in the front rows, their expensive gifts having already earned rounds of applause. But when Emma slowly opened that humble box, even the wealthiest parent in the room felt their heart break in the most beautiful way possible. To understand how this moment came to change everyone's perspective on what truly matters, we need to go back to where it all began. David Williams had been a single father for 3 years, ever since his wife Sarah lost her battle with cancer. Before her death, he had been a successful architect, but the mounting medical bills and the need to care for Emma had forced him to take whatever work he could find. Now he cleaned office buildings at night and did construction during the day, barely making enough to cover rent and Emma's basic needs. Their small apartment had thin walls and second-hand furniture, but it was filled with more love than most mansions ever see. The invitation to Emma's school's father-daughter gift exchange had arrived 2 weeks ago, printed on expensive cardstock that seemed to mock their modest circumstances. Hillcrest Academy was where the city's elite sent their children, and David had only managed to get Emma enrolled through a scholarship program after Sarah's death. He knew she didn't quite fit in with her classmates, who arrived in luxury cars and carried designer backpacks, but Emma never complained. She was resilient like her mother, finding joy in small things and lighting up every room she entered. David had been saving every spare penny for weeks, but even with his careful budgeting, he could only afford $15 for Emma's gift. While other fathers would present jewelry, electronics, or expensive toys, David walked through discount stores with growing anxiety, knowing that whatever he chose would pale in comparison. He watched Emma's excitement about the event and felt his heart breaking, wondering if his financial limitations would embarrass the daughter he loved more than life itself. The night before the gift exchange, David sat at their small kitchen table with a nearly empty wallet spread before him. Emma was asleep in her room, and the apartment was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic. He had visited 5 different stores that day, searching for something special within his meager budget. Everything seemed either too cheap or too expensive, and he felt the familiar weight of inadequacy that had haunted him since Sarah's death. He remembered how effortlessly his wife had handled these situations, always finding creative ways to make their limited resources feel abundant. That's when David remembered the small wooden box tucked away in his closet, the one Sarah had given him during their first year of marriage. Inside was a collection of items that had once seemed insignificant but now held immeasurable value. He spent the entire night carefully arranging these precious memories, writing a letter that took him 4 attempts to get right, his eyes filling with tears as he worked by the dim light of their small lamp. The morning of the gift exchange arrived with unusual warmth for early December. Emma bounced excitedly around their apartment, wearing the dress David had found at a thrift store and carefully altered to fit her perfectly. She had no idea about his financial struggles, seeing only the love and effort he put into everything he did for her. David wrapped the wooden box in brown paper and tied it with a ribbon he had saved from one of Emma's birthday presents, knowing it looked humble compared to the professionally wrapped gifts other children would receive. Hillcrest Academy's gymnasium had been transformed into an elegant venue, with white tablecloths, fresh flowers, and a small stage decorated with golden ribbons. Parents arrived in expensive cars, wearing designer clothes and carrying beautifully wrapped packages that clearly cost more than David made in a week. He felt increasingly out of place in his clean but worn work shirt, the only formal clothes he owned. Emma seemed oblivious to the class differences, greeting her classmates with genuine enthusiasm and introducing David to other parents with unmistakable pride. The ceremony began with Headmaster Patterson, a distinguished man in his 60s, explaining the tradition of the father-daughter gift exchange. Each father would present his daughter with a special gift while sharing why she was important to him. The first few presentations set a high bar: diamond earrings, the latest tablet, a designer watch, each accompanied by applause and admiring murmurs from the audience. David watched from the back of the room as father after father took the stage, presenting elaborate gifts with polished speeches about their daughter's achievements and potential. Emma sat with her classmates in the front row, her eyes shining with anticipation, occasionally turning to wave at her father with encouraging smiles. The contrast between David's humble appearance and the other father's obvious wealth became more pronounced with each presentation. "Emma Williams," Headmaster Patterson announced, and the little girl practically floated to the stage. David walked forward slowly, acutely aware of the whispers that followed him. His hands shook slightly as he climbed the steps, the simple wrapped box feeling impossibly heavy in his hands. Emma looked up at him with absolute trust and love, completely unaware of his internal struggle. "My daughter Emma," David began, his voice catching slightly, "you are the strongest person I know. When your mother got sick, you held my hand through every hospital visit. When we had to move to a smaller apartment, you told me it felt cozier. When I come home exhausted from work, you always have a hug waiting for me." His voice grew stronger as he spoke, the love for his daughter overriding his nervousness. "This gift might not look like much, but inside this box are all the reasons why you are the most precious thing in my world." Emma opened the box with careful fingers, and her gasp of delight echoed through the suddenly quiet gymnasium. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was her mother's wedding ring on a delicate chain, a pressed flower from Sarah's funeral bouquet, a photo of the three of them from happier times, and a handwritten letter from David expressing his love and pride. But what made Emma's eyes fill with tears was the small wooden heart her mother had carved for David during her final weeks in the hospital, inscribed with the words, "Love lives forever." The little girl looked up at her father with wonder and threw her arms around his waist. "Daddy, this is the most beautiful gift anyone could ever give me," she whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "It's like having Mama with us again." The gymnasium, which had been filled with polite applause for expensive presents, fell into complete silence as both father and daughter stood embracing on the stage. What happened next surprised everyone, most of all David himself. Mrs. Henderson, the mother of Emma's classmate Madison and wife of the city's most successful real estate developer, began to cry. Not the delicate tears of someone trying to preserve their makeup, but deep, soul-shaking sobs that came from a place of recognition and regret. Other parents followed, realizing that they had just witnessed something their money could never buy: pure, unconditional love expressed through sacrifice and creativity rather than credit cards and shopping malls. Headmaster Patterson stepped forward, his own eyes moist with emotion. "Mr. Williams," he said quietly, "in 30 years of education, I have never seen a more profound demonstration of what we hope to teach our children about love, family, and what truly matters in life. The applause that followed was different from what the previous fathers had received. It was deeper, more genuine, filled with respect rather than mere politeness. But David's story was far from over. As he and Emma left the stage, they were approached by several parents who had previously ignored them. Mrs. Chen, whose husband owned a successful construction company, asked David about his background in architecture. When she learned about his situation, she mentioned that her company was looking for someone with design experience to lead their new residential development project. Mr. Rodriguez, whose daughter Sophia had always been kind to Emma, pulled David aside. "My law firm handles pro bono cases," he said quietly. "I'd like to help you pursue some of the insurance claims from your wife's medical treatment that might have been wrongfully denied. Sometimes the system fails good people, and we need to fight back." The evening took on a completely different tone as genuine conversations replaced polite small talk. Children who had previously seen Emma as different now gathered around her, asking to hear more about her mother and the special gift her father had created. The wooden box had opened something much more valuable than material presents. It had opened hearts and minds to the reality that love and creativity matter far more than wealth and status. Emma spent the rest of the evening showing her classmates each item in the wooden box, explaining the stories behind them with the wisdom of someone much older than her 8 years. She spoke about her mother's courage during her illness, her father's sacrifices to take care of her, and how their small apartment felt like a palace because it was filled with love. Her words resonated with children who had everything money could buy, but had never experienced the deep security that comes from being truly cherished. As the evening wound down, David found himself surrounded by parents who wanted to know more about his story. He learned that Mrs. Patterson had lost her own mother at a young age and understood the profound impact of keeping loved ones' memories alive. Mr. Thompson, whose stern exterior had initially intimidated David, revealed that he had grown up in poverty and remembered the shame of being unable to afford what other children had. The conversation shifted to deeper topics: the pressure parents felt to provide material advantages, the fear that their children might be missing something essential, and the realization that many of them had lost sight of what actually mattered in their pursuit of success. David's humble gift had served as a mirror, reflecting back their own relationships with their children and forcing them to question whether they were building connection or just filling rooms with expensive objects. Share your thoughts below. How do you show love to the people who matter most to you? We'd love to hear your stories of meaningful moments that didn't cost anything, but meant everything. The impact of that evening extended far beyond the gymnasium walls. Within days, David received 3 job offers, each from parents who had been present at the gift exchange. Mrs. Chen's construction company offered him a position that would allow him to use his architectural skills while earning enough to move Emma to a better apartment. Mr. Rodriguez's law firm not only took his case pro bono, but also offered him part-time work doing research and client consultations. But perhaps most importantly, Emma's social life at school transformed completely. Children who had previously ignored her now sought her friendship, drawn to her authenticity and wisdom. Teachers noticed the shift and began incorporating discussions about different types of families and various ways of showing love into their curriculum. The gift exchange had sparked a school-wide conversation about values, empathy, and the difference between having money and being rich in the things that truly matter. David's story spread beyond Hillcrest Academy through social media posts and word of mouth. Parents from other schools began reaching out, asking him to speak about his experience and share his perspective on raising children with limited resources but unlimited love. He was reluctant at first, still feeling like an outsider in their world. but Emma encouraged him to share their story if it might help other families facing similar challenges. The local newspaper picked up the story, and soon David was featured in an article about single parents who exemplify resilience and creativity in the face of adversity. The article led to speaking opportunities and consulting work, as people realized that his architectural training, combined with his real-world experience of making the most of limited resources, made him uniquely qualified to design affordable housing that actually felt like home. 6 months after the gift exchange, David and Emma moved into a larger apartment in a better neighborhood, but they kept the wooden box prominently displayed on their mantelpiece. Emma had added new items to it: a photo from David's first day at his new job, a ribbon from her improved report card, and a letter from her mother's doctor saying that Sarah would be proud of how they had built a beautiful life together despite their loss. The transformation in their circumstances was remarkable, but the more profound change was in how they viewed themselves and their place in their community. David no longer felt ashamed of their humble beginnings or his working-class background. Instead, he understood that his experiences had given him something valuable: the ability to find joy in simple things, to be grateful for small improvements, and to recognize that true wealth lies in relationships and shared experiences rather than bank account balances. Emma grew into a confident young girl who understood both the value of money and its limitations. She remained kind to classmates regardless of their family's financial situation, and often surprised adults with her mature perspective on what makes life meaningful. Her teachers noted that she had a unique ability to help resolve conflicts between students by redirecting their attention from surface-level differences to deeper connections and shared experiences. The annual gift exchange at Hillcrest Academy was forever changed by that December evening. Headmaster Patterson instituted new guidelines encouraging creativity and personal meaning over monetary value in gifts. Parents began sharing stories about their own childhoods, their struggles, and the moments that had shaped their understanding of love and family. The event evolved from a showcase of wealth into a celebration of the diverse ways families express care and connection. Would you have been brave enough to give such a personal gift in front of so many people? Tell us in the comments what you think about David's choice and how you might have handled the same situation. Years later, when Emma graduated as valedictorian of her high school class, she chose to speak about the night her father's humble gift changed her entire world. She talked about learning that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the decision to act with love despite being afraid. She described how watching her father stand on that stage, vulnerable but determined to show his love in the only way he could afford, taught her that authenticity matters more than approval, and that the most powerful gifts come from the heart rather than the wallet. David sat in the audience that graduation night, wearing a suit he could finally afford, but carrying the same quiet dignity that had characterized him during their most difficult times. As Emma spoke about their journey together, he thought about Sarah and how proud she would be of the young woman their daughter had become. The wooden box that had started everything sat at home, now joined by academic awards, photographs from family vacations they could finally afford, and new memories of a life rebuilt through love, determination, and the kindness of a community that learned to see beyond surface appearances. The story of the broke dad who couldn't afford an expensive gift but gave something priceless instead became a reminder that the most meaningful presents can't be purchased in stores. They require courage, creativity, and the willingness to be vulnerable in service of love. David's gift to Emma that night wasn't just the contents of a wooden box. It was the demonstration that their relationship could survive anything. that love could triumph over circumstances, and that sometimes the most broken people have the most beautiful gifts to share. In a world that often measures worth by material possessions, David and Emma's story stands as a testament to the enduring power of authentic love, creative expression, and the courage to be vulnerable. The gymnasium that had once echoed with judgment and whispers became a place where hearts opened and perspectives changed, proving that sometimes the smallest gestures create the largest transformations. The wooden box remains on their mantelpiece today, still adding new treasures as their life continues to unfold. Each item tells a story not of what they lacked, but of what they discovered. That family isn't defined by what you can provide materially, but by the love you're willing to share, the memories you create together, and the courage you show in facing life's challenges side by side. Never underestimate the power of a gift given with complete love and total authenticity. Sometimes the most humble presentations carry the most profound messages, and the most broken hearts have the most beautiful stories to tell. Family is built not on what we can afford to give, but on what we're willing to sacrifice, create, and share from the deepest places of our souls. Subscribe for more powerful stories like this, and click on the video on the screen to watch the next one with a twist so powerful you'll never forget it.